Today we're going to be giving a weather report, and we're also going to have Dr. Jordan Thomas from MU Extension serving as our educational topic leader today. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat. And if you would like the questions to be public, you can type them into the chat to everyone. If you want them to be private, go ahead and send them to me, to Eric Bailey, and I will relay those anonymously to the group. So Dr. Guinan, if you are there, can you go ahead and get your weather report up on the old PowerPoint, please? Thank you.
You bet. And can you hear me okay, Eric?
Loud and clear.
Oh, great. Thanks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'll get right into it. It's been about a month since we last met. October is behind us, and I always like to, talk about where we've been and then where we will be going, hopefully with a correct forecast. But on the upper left, this is October records going back 127 years for Missouri. On the left is 1895, and on the far right is just this past month, 2021 of October. And it was a warm October, actually warm and wet, which was a good thing because we had a very dry August and September. And so it was nice to get a little bit more moisture in October to help renew some of that grass growth with the warm conditions as well. You could see it was our warmest October since 2016, so 5 years ago. And you can see here in Missouri in the upper right, these are the departure from normals. The average is about 3.5 degrees above normal for the month of October. And that wasn't not only for Missouri, for about the eastern 2/3 of the country. We had some very mild October conditions. Lower left is precipitation. Again, I mentioned how wet it was, and it was our wettest October all the way back to 2014. So the statewide average was just under 6 inches, but was nearly over 2.5 inches above normal for the month. And it ranked as our 9th wettest October on record. That's a pretty decent amount considering we have 127 years of precipitation records, and it was the 9th wettest on record. So a top 10. Lower right shows radar analysis or estimates of precipitation. You can see the darker, deeper reds is where most of the rainfall occurred. Again, 5 to 7, more than 8 inches in some parts of the state, especially Southwest Missouri, where it had been very dry. It was nice to see all that rainfall. Northeastern, some parts of northern, southeast Missouri, a little dry pocket here around the St. Louis area and east central Missouri. A little bit of an area of dryness in far northeast corner of the state, but for the most part, some very wet conditions, welcome conditions, at least in regard to getting those grasses to grow, and the warm conditions really helped out. I will say we never really saw any hard freeze throughout the entire month of October, which is somewhat unusual. In fact, we never saw most locations didn't even see 32 degrees. So little to no frost experienced. And so the grasses kept growing with the moisture and the warm conditions. And that, I think, helped mitigate the concerns for livestock winter feed supplies with this renewed grass growth that we saw for much of the month. Well, now we're into November. We're up through on Veterans Day, November 11th, 2021. And precipitation, it started out pretty dry. On the upper left, these are radar estimates of precipitation from November 1 through this morning. Most of this fell within the past 24 hours. That was our first significant rain event for the month of November, occurred overnight. And you can see radar estimates indicating Northwest Missouri. They were the recipients of some big totals. And when you see that 2 inches or so over a 24-hour period, that's a big rain event, especially for the month of November. And the table on the upper right shows some of the actual rain gauge reports. Again, mostly Northwest Missouri, numerous reports of over 2 inches in parts of Holt, Harrison, Gentry, Nottoway County. Some big rainfall totals, and it actually had been dry somewhat in parts of Northwest Missouri. So this is a good time of year to get that soil profile recharged, and well as bring those surface water supplies back to capacity. And when you get that much rain, I bet there definitely was a rebound in the surface and groundwater supplies, especially up in Northwest Missouri. Lower left shows what the drought monitor was indicating about a month ago. Again, we had seen some abnormal dryness to moderate drought conditions impacting much of north central, northwest, even parts of central, southwest, south central Missouri. Fast forward to the latest map that was issued this morning, and you could see the improvement due to the wetter October conditions. Only some residual pockets of dryness. All of southwestern Missouri, with that much above normal precip in October, has eliminated any sort of drought concerns. I would say here up in Nottoway County, I wouldn't be surprised to see this one go away because of all the rainfall over the past 24 hours, but just a couple pockets in north central, east central, and down here in southeast Missouri. So droughty conditions have been improving over the past month. Currently, we see we've had a strong system move through the state with these windy conditions that now that upper level system resides in the upper Midwest. We're seeing somewhat cooler, more seasonable conditions. We've been very mild over the past 4 to 5 days with highs in the 60s and 70s. Generally, high temperatures this time of year are in the lower to mid 50s across the state. And so we're seeing seasonable conditions as of about 10 minutes ago. On the right shows the much cooler or the drier conditions with dew points only in the 30s and lower 40s. A little bit wetter here or more moist here in southeast Missouri where the rainfall is still lingering in those far southeastern counties. It does look like sunshine is going to persist throughout the course of this Veterans Day with cloudy conditions working their way eastward through the Boot Hill. The sun will pop out later today in that part of the state. Generally high temperatures in the middle 50s. Maybe some of the southern areas could reach 60 degrees. But it does look like there is going to be a reinforcing shot of colder air impacting our state on Friday. That upper level system in the upper Midwest is going to be slow to move out. So the circulation around that upper level low will bring some colder air out of Canada, a reinforcing shot starting tomorrow with high temperatures generally struggling to get out of the 40s for tomorrow with increasing clouds as that next system moves through. There's not a lot of moisture with it, so I will probably no precipitation, just cooler, more cloudy conditions tomorrow. I think Saturday morning, we'll see some of the coldest temperatures we've seen in the state so far this fall. It could be our first hard freeze for many locations on Saturday morning with those lows getting down perhaps into the middle 20s. Most areas will see freezing temperatures on Saturday morning. Partly cloudy conditions, still some cold air hanging out. So it's temperatures struggling to get out of the 40s. That's actually below normal for this time of year. And then another system, perhaps bringing another chance of some showers on Sunday with a little bit of moderation in temperatures, perhaps getting into the lower 50s, especially across southwestern parts of the state. Lows on Sunday morning, again, some freezing temperatures likely with lows in the lower to middle 30s. This is the forecast over the next 5 days. Not a lot of precipitation is anticipated with these systems impacting us over the weekend. Only very low totals, maybe a 100th of an inch or so. This 1/4 inch contour you see is more of the system that has been moving through this morning and later this afternoon across the Ohio River Valley. There is a system that could bring some more precipitation across the upper Midwest, but that won't be impacting us as we go into Friday and Saturday. It does look like cool, pretty dry conditions for the next several days. This is the forecast, the 6 to 10 day outlook, which will put us through next week, most of next week. It does look like a return of warmer conditions, especially starting up on Monday and Tuesday and into Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised to see, again, temperatures into the 60s, maybe lower 70s by Tuesday of next week, so much above normal. That warmth is forecast to be somewhat enhanced across much of the southwestern half of the country. That includes about the western half of Missouri. On the right indicates drier than normal conditions across parts of the Midwest, extending into the Southwest. Perhaps another system towards the end of next week, maybe on Thursday and into Friday, impacting parts of the Ohio River Valley from Texas all the way up to southeast Missouri, perhaps an enhanced likelihood of some additional precipitation by the middle and latter part of next week. I will show you, since we're only meeting once a month, the seasonal outlook that for November, December, and January. We are in a La Nina condition. That's where we have cooler than average sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. Those conditions do have teleconnections or impacts on what could happen perhaps for our weather. This is the forecast of seasonal temperatures For November, December, and January, you could see an enhanced likelihood of above normal temperatures over the next 3 months across much of the southern half of the country. A little bit more here in the middle part of the country for precip, equal chances. There's no strong indication one way or the other of whether November through January will be above or below average for precip. A little bit higher likelihood during La Nina winters of seeing above normal precip in the upper Midwest, the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest. Generally, drier conditions prevail across the southern U.S. during La Nina winters. I will say that the new outlook will be issued for December next Thursday, November 18th, 1 week from today, and that will include a new winter outlook that will be issued on Thursday, November 18th. Again, with winter type patterns, I wouldn't be surprised to see much change in these maps, perhaps an indication of colder conditions across the northern plains, the Pacific Northwest, dry conditions persisting across the southern parts of the country, maybe an extension of this wetness that will impact parts of Missouri as we go into the winter season. But generally, what we witnessed last year, we had a La Nina winter as well. We actually had somewhat mild conditions in December and January, but we had a very cold air outbreak in February. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through winter and the first part of spring, what those outlooks will be with the anticipation of La Nina continue throughout much of the winter. And Eric and Jordan, that's pretty much a weather report. I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Guinan, thanks again, as always, for joining us and providing such valuable content for our Forage Livestock town halls. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions for Pat? Well, hearing none, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, my colleague from across the office suite and confidant, Dr. Jordan Thomas. He is the state extension cow-calf specialist for the University of Missouri. And he is also the leader of the Show Me Select Heifer Development Program. And today he's going to provide us an overview of this program. So Dr. Thomas, take it away, my friend.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for having me today. Like Eric mentioned, I'm going to talk through the Show Me Select Replacement Heifer program and what that program actually is, and maybe some of the opportunities that there might be for your operation if you're thinking about developing heifers or especially marketing heifers, bred heifers. And so let's jump right in and get to that. If I can make my screen cooperate. So first of all, what is Show Me Select? You've probably heard of Show Me Select. It's really recognized nationally now as a program for heifer development, and Show Me Select heifers are pretty well branded. But it's an educational program first and foremost. It's really a marketing program because it's first an educational program. And so that if you look at that headline that I show there, really that is the goal, is to better develop heifers and to build better heifers. And so what does that mean? Obviously, the genetic merit of animals plays a role in their potential as replacement females, but so does the management system that we impose upon those females and ask those heifers to function in. So again, it is really nationally recognized at this point. It's been around since about 96, 97 in the state of Missouri. It was started by my predecessor, Dave Patterson. And I always joke that it's the black and gold standard in heifer development nationally. It's not just high quality heifers, but high information heifers. So bred heifers that really come with a fairly precise expected calving date, for example, that come with a lot of information about who sired their calves and so on and so forth. So the vision in the 90s in establishing this program was first to create an understanding of how the development program and the management that we impose upon replacement heifers ultimately affects their reproductive outcomes. And then how those reproductive outcomes in heifers ultimately spill over to affect the reproductive performance long-term of the cow herd. And of course, with reproductive technologies, we also have an opportunity to make genetic improvement. And what that might mean for you might be something different than what it means to your neighbor, depending on what traits you feel like you get paid for, so to speak. But certainly it's an opportunity as we think about better managing reproduction to also manage genetics with a little bit more precision. And then lastly, having done all of those things to to recognize that when you have a premium product, you really kind of have to develop a premium market for it in order to actually capture the value. And certainly these are valuable animals because of the quantity of information and the quality of information and how they've been developed. Okay, so what is it? It's an on-farm heifer development and marketing program. So this isn't something where you load heifers up and bring them to a university farm and we do it for you. It's not that, and it's intentionally not that. Because the intent of the program is to help you become a better heifer developer and to really expand that enterprise or expand your success with that enterprise on your own operation. Again, it continues to be the largest and really most widely known program of its kind in the country. There are a couple programs nationally that have patterned themselves somewhat off of it, but ours is certainly the first and probably the largest. So 2020, I'll give you a brief update, was a really strange year to be in extension in general, and certainly it was for this program as well because of the coronavirus. And so, we had to wade through not just actual risk of disease, but also university policies and how we could actually power through and get some of these things done, which was no small task. But we still had all of the sales in the spring when things were really tenuous, and really had pretty good success in that sales season in general. We had about a 2% increase in the number of heifers enrolled in 2020 compared to 2019, with about 5,000 heifers enrolled in total. Almost 1,700 heifers actually sold through sanctioned sales in Missouri. That's about a 13% increase from 2019. And then total sales of those heifers totaled over $3.25 million. And so that's another, again, sizable increase from 2019. We also had our first time sale ever in central Missouri, in the central and south central, region in Vienna. And Anita Ellis deserves a lot of credit with MU Extension for putting that together and really making that thing go. But now we have a little bit broader distribution of sales geographically in the state. It's really a program that is heavily, heavily, heavily supported by veterinarians and by regional livestock specialists with MU Extension. And so those folks are the backbone of the program, no doubt. And we're really fortunate to have good veterinarians in the state of Missouri that can do some of these reproductive procedures and things that are required in that program. You see there on the screen just general numbers about number of heifers enrolled and sold through the program over that course of time. Now it's impressive, but at the same time, this is relatively a small, this is a small percentage relatively of all of the heifers that we develop in the state of Missouri. And so we would love to see more producers take advantage of this program, because I think it is an opportunity not just to potentially market heifers, but really to follow a framework for heifer development that results in improved success in heifer development on your own operation. So in terms of enrollment numbers, really strong participation all across the state of Missouri. About 110 counties out of our 114 counties have enrolled heifers in that program. Buyers have come from every county. I sometimes joke, I don't know where exactly in St. Louis or St. Louis County they're going to put heifers, but they've at least come with that intention, or at least that mailing address, and really have sold heifers successfully into really most of the counties in the state of Missouri. Also, I mentioned a lot of national interest in heifers coming out of this program. We've sold heifers successfully into 21 states now, as far away as Arizona and Florida. And so, again, it does have a national reputation. You can see some of the sales averages from 1996 through 2020, both for spring and fall sales. For the most part, this is tracking market trends for heifer value, obviously. But there is a premium for Show Me Select heifers compared to just typical averages for replacement heifers. It's a little hard to give a precise number for that, but generally our economists will put it in that $200 range for where Show Me Select heifers rank compared to just a market average for replacement heifers. You can see our sales average prices certainly differ from region to region in the state of Missouri. We tend to have very high prices for heifers, especially in the southeast and northeast portion of the state. Southwest tends to be our lower sales averages, which is probably a great thing for buyers, right, in the southwest part of Missouri. And that also tends to be a very large sale, which plays into that as well. But likewise, similar types of trends for the fall sales last year, and these are pretty reflective of the way things normally look in that program. I like to harp on this a little bit. The use of artificial insemination in this program is really surprising when you compare it to industry averages. If you look at industry averages in beef cattle, somewhere between 15 and 20% of replacement heifers nationally receive one or more AI services, which is not an impressive rate of adoption of that technology necessarily. In this program, over 95% of the heifers actually receive one or more AI services. So it's very much the norm that these folks are using synchronization systems and AI to start their breeding seasons. Does it pay to do that? I'll show you a little bit of data. I think it does. If we look at the market premium, and again, these heifers are sold at auction. So this is the price the buyers are valuing the heifers. This is not a set price. This is just what the market is doing. In 2020, that was about $113 premium for a heifer that was sold carrying an AI pregnancy compared to a pregnancy that resulted from natural service. And it's not because these AI bred heifers are scarce. Actually, most of the heifers that sold through that program were in fact carrying an AI pregnancy. I also talk about this program as producing high information heifers. And what I mean by that is, regardless of your genetic focus on your operation or the traits that you think matter to you, these heifers come with a lot of information, in particular about the service sires that were used to produce their calves. So for example, if they are bred to an AI sire, or in other words, they receive an AI service or one or more AI services, that sire has to meet certain minimums for the accuracy value of traits, and has to meet a certain minimum for calving ease, just to ensure that ease of calving, which is so important in heifers, but has to meet a minimum accuracy for traits for that just to ensure the confidence that we have in the merit of that animal for calving ease. In addition to that, if the heifer herself was sired by a high accuracy sire, which in most cases would be an AI sire, essentially every case would be an AI sire for that sire's accuracy values to be that high, that heifer can be classified as a tier 2 heifer. In other words, we have a little more confidence about whether those numbers are accurate, whether those EPDs actually reflect the true genetic merit of that sire. And so these high information heifers are really valued by the market. If we look at just the premiums that they fetch, a heifer carrying an AI pregnancy, for example, that's a tier 1. Again, there's this premium for AI pregnancies versus natural service pregnancies. But if the heifer herself was sired by a high accuracy sire, buyers are valuing that higher. In other words, they value the confidence of knowing a little bit more about the genetic merit of that heifer for whatever traits are interested. Now, we don't specify that those sires have to be in a certain range of EPDs. So we're not trying to tell you what direction to select necessarily, but it's just an indication of the confidence that you have about whatever estimate of that sire's genetic merit there actually is. Now, in this case, this is a little bit of a scarcity piece. There are not all that many heifers that sell through the program that are classified as tier 2. And that certainly is part of why those premiums may be the way that they are. But there are opportunities to market heifers with a lot of information, and that can be a way to get compensated. I've focused a lot on numbers and marketing, but just to again emphasize, it's not really a marketing program. There's a marketing component, sure, but it's really an educational program. And so in 2020, just as an example, 2/3 of the heifers enrolled in the program did not sell through Shanks and Show Me Select sales. So in other words, they were either, marketed independently potentially, or retained on the farm. And a lot of them are retained on the farm as replacements. And I would really encourage you to think about enrolling in this program if you're going to develop heifers with no intention of selling them. And that might sound a little crazy because, yeah, you're going to pay an enrollment fee, but the relationship that you build with your livestock specialist and with your veterinarian and having this framework to follow is really helpful if you're trying to level up your game, so to speak, on developing replacement heifers. So it's an opportunity. I always say to follow a recipe, to screen heifers, develop heifers, breed heifers, select replacement females in your operation. That makes some sense. So the fee structure is $25 per operation as an annual membership fee, which is very trivial if you're developing any number of heifers at all. And then it's only $2 per head to enroll heifers in that program. At one time, it was as high as $5 per head, and that's actually been lowered because we want to see more heifers enrolled in this program because we feel like it can really help folks, even if they're not intending to market them. So it's just $2 per head to enroll heifers. If you do want to put tags in heifers that qualify, so that they can be sold as Show Me Select with that brand name, whether that's through a sanctioned sale or through something independent, that's a $20 per head tagging fee, which I think, given the premiums that these heifers receive, I think is pretty affordable. Here's the timeline of that program and the steps involved. Now, this kind of creates a chart shock, right? There's just too much on here, and it looks like a really complicated program. I know it does. And that's the downside of trying to put anything on one page. I'm going to break this apart, and we're just going to walk through each of these steps, which is weaning, pre-breeding, breeding, and pregnancy exam, and then a pre-sale screening. Now, that may feel like a lot of times to handle heifers. It's pretty simple once you actually get going with this. I realize it's still work, but let's dive into this a little bit and show you why some of these requirements are here and what actually that process looks like. So at weaning, those heifers have to have a 5-way respiratory vaccine with lepto, and then also vibriosis, which is optional in this program now. At one time it was required, it's optional now. They have to have a 7-way clostridial vaccine. And then the weird one here is brucellosis. These calves do have to have a calf hood vaccination. And the reason is not that there's an extremely high risk of brucellosis in the state of Missouri. There's not. But the reason is a lot of these heifers do sell across state lines. And so to make sure that we can attract those buyers and not overly complicate it by some of the heifers being able to leave and some of them not, all the heifers have to receive a calf hood vaccination for brucellosis. That will sneak up on you if you're not paying attention to the program requirements. So if you're intending to get heifers into this program and you want to follow this program, that is the weird one to have on your radars. Those heifers do need to be calf hooded. And then you're going to booster according to label directions. Weaning is not a time in this program when a veterinarian necessarily or a livestock specialist is going to come out to your farm and do some of this stuff with you. Although you're certainly welcome to pursue that if you need some help or want to work with a veterinarian on that. Obviously, the brucellosis piece is a component where the veterinarian does need to be involved, but that could be done really at any time prior to yearling age. That's the requirement for that particular one. At weaning, you're going to evaluate structural soundness and sort out some animals that just aren't going to work in that program. And then remove horns and skurs. You don't have to remove skurs that are 2 inches or less in length. That's been recently updated. But you do have to remove horns in this program. It's just the standard of the program. And then parasite control is needed. Now at pre-breeding, this is when I think that the program is really starting. About 30 to 60 days prior to the start of your breeding season, you're going to do a booster vaccination. And then you're going to have a veterinarian do a pre-breeding examination. And that really has 2 components: a reproductive tract score, which is an assessment of whether that heifer is cycling or not. It's individual to the heifer. The veterinarian will palpate the uterus and ovaries, make an assessment about the cyclicity status of those heifers, and assign a 1 to 5 score. There's a lot of good data on that and how that works and the value that that has in trying to characterize cyclicity status of heifers. And that is a program requirement that you have to do that. The veterinarian will also take a pelvic measurement. And the goal there is just to identify heifers that have an abnormally small pelvis so that they can be screened out of the program or remeasured at a later time. That's also an opportunity. You're going to, again, evaluate structural soundness, blemishes, parasite control is needed. And then another good thing to do at this time is plan out with your livestock specialist the breeding program, because this is the time to get that planned out in this program. So if you're going to use an AI sire, run those sires by that livestock specialist so that they can confirm with you that that sire's calving ease EPD in particular and the accuracy value there meets that minimum requirement, just to ensure that we're not going to have a tremendous risk of calving difficulty. If you use natural service sires in this program, those natural service sires have to have genomic tests. So a couple of years ago, we implemented that requirement. And that is really to give more confidence about that sire's genetic merit for calving ease. Again, just to take that risk of calving difficulty out of the equation. So those natural service sires have to have genomic enhanced EPDs and meet that calving ease EPD requirement. You can find that on the Show Me Select website. It's a little bit different, of course, by breed, just because those breeds calculate calving ease EPDs slightly differently. So there's a different minimum for different breeds, depending on how that's done. So just refer to the website on that. And most importantly, talk to your livestock specialist and run those breeding decisions that you're thinking about by them. In terms of the pregnancy exam, I didn't include breeding on this slide, but basically for breeding, you're going to record breeding dates. So if you AI, you're going to record breeding dates of those AI programs and the sires used, and then you're going to record natural service bull exposure and those sires used. For that part's very straightforward. For the pregnancy exam has to be done before 90 days after the start of breeding. So the rationale for that cutoff is if I go do a pregnancy diagnosis in cows or heifers that are past that 90 kind of 100-day mark, my accuracy for determining an expected calving date goes down. It just goes down because of natural biological variation that we see in fetal size by day of gestation. So before 90 days, that variation is at an acceptable range that veterinarian can pretty accurately determine an expected calving date and really accurately can distinguish between AI versus natural service pregnancies in this program. If you go after that, because that accuracy drops down and we can't allow heifers to be sold if they have really inaccurate expected calving dates, because that's what buyers are paying for in this program, those heifers wouldn't be allowed to participate. So it does need to be done before 90 days after the start of the breeding season. And then they're going to get a booster vaccination for lepto. That pregnancy exam can be done with either ultrasound or palpation. The vast majority of veterinarians in this program are using ultrasound, partly because their sellers are getting rewarded, right, if they market AI versus natural service heifers, and they really want to know that with accuracy. If heifers had failed to meet the minimum pelvic requirements in this program, they can be remeasured at that time and have to be above 180 at that time. So there's that's spelled out in the requirements as well. Again, it's an opportunity to evaluate structural soundness, blemishes, and do parasite control as needed. So that's the program in a nutshell. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but remember, you've got a veterinarian and a livestock specialist that you're working with all the way throughout it. It's in their interest to make sure it works for you, and so they're going to try to make sure that you understand those requirements and you follow them. If you do want to put tags in heifers' ears and actually sell them potentially as Show Me Select, here's what that process looks like. About 30 days before the sale that you're planning to consign heifers to, and they need a confirmatory pregnancy exam to make sure that they are still in fact pregnant. And a very small number of heifers will lose a pregnancy, so it's important that we do that. We also are required to treat for internal and external parasites. in this particular program if those heifers are going to sell through a sanctioned sale. And that was just a decision that was made a long time ago, and all of those sales require that. So then the Show Me Select ear tag can be applied to qualifying heifers that you intend to sell. You certainly don't have to tag every heifer that you enrolled. And if you have heifers that fail to qualify for whatever reason along the way, let's say they had an inadequate pelvic area, those heifers would not be eligible to receive a tag. So your livestock specialist will help you figure out who could and could not receive an ear tag and who you could potentially consign. It's also a good opportunity to think through just how you would group those heifers together in sale lots if you do intend to consign them in a sanctioned sale, and your livestock specialist could help you think through some of those considerations. Other than that, we're just going to check IDs, cross-reference everything. That's, again, something your livestock specialist will help you with. You'll have to have a health certificate for those heifers to sell in a sanctioned sale. And then they also have to be BVD PI tested negative. Again, structural soundness, we try to take a look at that as much as we can in this program because we want to catch those blemishes or problems really ideally before they get to a sale. Heifers are evaluated at a sanctioned sale by Missouri Department of Ag graders, and those graders are going to catch some things if they got missed along the way. And at every sale that I can think of, usually a heifer goes home. So it is something we take seriously. We obviously don't want to sell an unsound animal or an animal that has, long toes or is light muscled or something like that. So that's that process. If you want to know a little bit more about the screening process, we get so many questions on this that I actually put together a publication on this earlier this year, which is just called Screening of Show Me Select Replacement Heifers. You can find it online pretty easily. It's at this link below. But it walks through the pelvic measurement process. The reproductive tract score process is obviously another way in which heifers get screened. And then we do look at foot scores and body condition scores and muscling scores. And really there's an acceptable range within which those heifers need to be in order to be sold in a Show Me Select sanctioned sale and carry that tag. So I'd refer you to that if you have some questions. And then in the interest of keeping it short today, happy to answer any questions that you may have, but also so are these people, which are the Show Me Select regional coordinators. We divide the state up into 9 regions. And so if you have a question about enrolling in Show Me Select, or potentially you want to think about, consigning heifers to a Show Me Select sale someday, or just you want to learn more about that process, I refer you to one of these folks. And of course, you're certainly welcome to contact me if you have some questions as well. With that, I think I will stop there, but happy to take any questions if you do have some today.
Thank you, Jordan. Really appreciate that overview of Show Me Select. Are there any questions? So I'll jump in and ask one, Jordan. Do the heifers that are eligible for Show Me Select have to be born and raised on your farm, or what is the protocol on, perhaps purchasing weaned heifers with the intention of developing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. They do not have to be born and raised on your farm. And we have some great heifer developers in the state that do exactly what you're talking about, Eric. They go and they find groups of weaned heifer calves, or maybe they have relationships with some folks that they know they can routinely year after year get some nice heifer calves to work with. They put them through a development program and breed those heifers, and then just market heifers. In fact, that has been so effective for folks as a little business model that we've got some folks in the Show Me Select program that used to have mature cow herds and no longer run mature cows because of just how nice of a little business that is to buy replacement heifer candidate calves and put them through this program. So it's a good question. They don't necessarily have to come from the state of Missouri either. And we do have some folks bring heifers from out of the state of Missouri and figure out ways to develop them well. My only caution I give on that is just, be a little cautious if you're going to move animals. Well, the old expression, right, is it's pretty easy to take animals north and west. It's kind of hard to take them south and east. And so if you're coming out of the Great Plains region, or just generally north and west of here, and you bring those heifers to fescue country, right after weaning, that can be a little bit tough. So just if you are trying to source heifers from out of state, just think through your development program, and I think your livestock specialist is a great resource to think through how you actually do that.
Yeah, Jordan, this is Craig. I've got a question out of curiosity. I would assume the Show Me Select Heifer program has brought quite a bit of funds into the state. In other words, just improve the state economy. Do you have any numbers on that?
Yeah, so Scott Brown has worked on that question some over the years, and I don't know that I have a recent number, but if you use like a 10x multiplier or something, you can come up with a multi-million-dollar number, obviously, in terms of the ripple effects on the Missouri economy. So it's definitely been an impactful program. I agree with you, Craig.
Economically, is there a minimum amount of heifers to put into Show Me Select that makes sense, financially?
Oh, that's a good question. So yes, but what that is probably depends on your specific operation. Does it make sense to enroll one heifer in Show Me Select? Maybe not, right? Because of the logistics and some of the things that are all going to be borne by the value that you get from one heifer, right? So I certainly recognize that. Now, that said, we have producers in the state that will enroll small numbers. I mean, single digit numbers, 8 or 10 head, and certainly feel that contributes some value to their overall program. So I don't know that I would say that it only benefits the large operators. In fact, I would say that in some ways, it's probably the small to medium-sized operators that really benefit a lot from it, because it would be harder for them to otherwise develop this kind of a market opportunity. So yeah, it's an opportunity for folks of really any size. And we do have some larger operators in the state, by the way, that do standalone sales of Show Me Select heifers. There's a couple in Northeast Missouri in particular. And so aside from even the consigned sales, we have large numbers of heifers actually go through standalones as well. I might just mention, unrelated to that last question, one question that I get a lot that I think is always worth mentioning, even if I don't get it today. Show Me Select heifers often sell in pretty fleshy states, and they often do that for a reason, which is that buyers value that. In some cases, they might even be to your eye appear to be too fleshy, depending on where you're calibrated. And I just want to encourage you that this is not a program necessarily to overdevelop heifers or subsidize heifers or use a lot of feed resources to do that. If you have a lower input heifer development mentality, I think you can still cultivate a really good buyer base within that program. And I think that there are ways to do that. We have some producers in the state that do that. That is kind of my mentality about heifer development practices as well, is that they need to be cost effective and don't necessarily get to involve tremendous amounts of purchase feed resources. So if that's your mentality, and again, it's my mentality as well, I still think there's an opportunity for you in these kinds of programs rather, to do that, and then also cultivate a really high quality market for those heifers if that's your goal. So don't let that discourage you.
Jordan, one more question from the moderator. Is there any other reproductive management content that you would like that your program has put forth your recent months before we go ahead and wrap up?
Yeah, so there's several things. Probably the best place to start is to go to that MizzouRepro.com website that you see listed on this particular slide. And I'll point you there for a couple of reasons. One is that it'll link out to my Facebook page and YouTube channel by the same name, Mizzou Repro, and we put out a lot of videos and things like that that are available on those platforms. But then also there's I maintain just an article section on that page. It's got just about everything I've ever written in the popular press and things like that. And there's a lot on there about heifer development and about thinking through it in a really profit-driven, responsible business kind of context. And so I would encourage you to look at that if you're thinking about maybe expanding your efforts in heifer development, or trying to think through how Show Me Select could potentially fit into that. The other one I'll tell you about just briefly, we are piloting a series of workshops around the state of Missouri, partly because there's a new extension manual available called Whole System Management of Beef Cattle Reproduction. And that's something that I put together with several state specialists and field specialists in extension. Eric, you were one of those that contributed heavily, and I sure appreciate that. But that manual, I think, is pretty good, and we want to help folks have a systems-based approach to reproductive management, not just of heifers, but of mature cows as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can find a little bit more about that on extension.missouri.edu as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time today, Jordan. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. I just want to real quickly before we close for today, I want to acknowledge that today is Veterans Day, and acknowledge the service of those that have served in the military, and thank you for your service. So we really appreciate that. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap up our town hall meetings. Look for us to come back next month, I believe, and be on the lookout for some advertisements. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.